Hello, everyone. I'm Justine Giles, and this is episode 42 of the Sit Down.
Welcome
Thank
to
you.
our little show that we call the Sit Down.
I like
What are
it.
you up to?
Well, it's Friday
were you-
night.
I guess what were you up to before you started talking to us?
Honestly, I was pretty tired, and if I wasn't talking to you, I'd probably want to go to bed. But it's still early, so I had a latte, and here we are. I'm back. I'm alive.
Okay, so you're good for
Oh,
about an
I'm
hour?
good.
Okay,
Oh, for sure.
just
I got my
just half-
energy back. I got a second wind.
just halfway in the conversation, Justine goes,
Yeah. Okay, I'm out, guys.
yeah,
Well, in daylight savings, you guys don't have that, do you?
no, and it's kind of a blessing, but also not because the rest of the country changes. So
Yeah.
for us, it's the same way as for you. If you're trying to figure out something in Saskatchewan, you have to convert time, and then
That's so weird.
So are you an hour ahead or behind us right now?
Behind.
So
An hour
then
behind
it's
you.
so it's 7 o'clock?
Yeah.
And you're ready for bed?
I know, isn't that sad? I'm not gigging anymore, and I'm ready for bed at 7. So I started having baths at 2 in the afternoon. So
Nice.
like literally. So yeah. Well, it gets dark around 4:30 here, so
yeah, I guess here too. Yeah. So do you
pretty bad.
Oh, there you are.
Oh,
Okay.
there.
You
Sorry,
stopped
guys,
for a
I
second.
lost you there.
Yeah.
We got a glitch
This is
here
my
somewhere when you said it gets dark at 4:30.
Yeah, it gets dark at 4:30. So if you have dinner, you're ready to go to bed by 5 in my world.
Right. I can't laugh because I'm in bed right now, as you can see. This is
Yeah.
where it sleeps.
Oh,
Right.
man.
but you have an excuse.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
How was your surgery?
You know what? It was successful. Everything went well. So now it's just a lot of recuperating time. I'm not straying too far from the bed these days, so a lot of bed rest. I can move around with crutches and stuff, and I think getting in and out of the bed is the hardest part.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think I'm hopeful that it's all going to be well worth it. So
Man,
yeah,
That's good.
considering that they literally broke the biggest bone in your body, and
yeah. So
you're already on crutches not even a week after.
yeah, what happened was they cut my femur, and I forget the name of the surgery, a derotational osteotomy or something like that, I think is what it's called.
Don't hurt yourself.
Essentially, my hips were twisted, and what
Oh.
they did was they cut my femur and twisted my femur, put a rod in, and then pinned it in there to like twist my hips back. So then, yeah, and then when the
Wow.
bone heals, then everything should be in alignment again. So fun stuff.
No big
Broken
deal.
femur. Yeah, right. No big deal.
Oh my God.
I was
That's
telling
crazy.
Mark before, I was like, if I need to like reposition and I'm wincing, I was like, make sure you cut that out. I don't want to see like a painful face on camera, but it is what it is. It's all
Yeah.
good.
That's good. Well, I'm glad you're recovering well.
Thank you. So I'm gonna kick us off with your Instagram posts this week. Holy shit, did I laugh? I thought that was the funniest thing. I think that was awesome.
Thank you.
How long did that take you to do?
Honestly, I just did it the other night. Probably less than an hour to record it. I ended up with like 20 minutes of footage that I wanted to cut down, which was really hard to cut that down. And
Hang on, for those of you who didn't see it, like this guy here, what happened?
well, shit got weird. So our lovely friend Matt Blaze, he's a singer-songwriter from Calgary, and he's a dear friend of mine, and honestly one of the best humans I've met in a really long time. And Are we frozen or not frozen? It's hard for me
No.
to tell.
No,
Are we
No,
good?
no, I'm here.
Okay.
We're just listening.
Technology. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
As soon as we hear the name Matt, it's like, what's gonna happen?
Everyone's like,
Every
Yeah.
time
What?
freezes when you talk about Matt.
literally. Yeah, so Matt's such a good dude and honestly one of the best humans I've met in a really long time. And we've been getting to know each other, and we've done some little gigs together and what have you. And when you get to know someone and you have that close comfort and you start joking around, I don't know, you just learn things about people that maybe someone wouldn't know who follows him on Instagram or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. Him and I have been talking about the fact that I've done some of his songs and covered them seriously, and he's always like, "Oh, you do my songs better than me, and you should just take my name and sing my songs," and just became this joke. And then one day we were talking, and I was like, you know, what if this is like a comedy? Like, what if I just do a parody and dress like you and try to sound like you? And he's like, that would be hilarious. I'm like, I don't want to offend you. And he's like, no, that's gonna be friggin' hilarious. So basically, I went to the dollar store on like Tuesday and bought some toques and bought like a plastic microphone, and I ran out to buy a harmonica and just thought of everything possible that was reminiscent of Matt or things that represent Matt to me. And yeah, I just like came home and tried to dress like him, and I put a beard on my face and tried my best to do some Matt impressions. So,
That was, oh man, I tell you that I laughed so hard. Even at like when you posted the bloopers up after, I was cracking up at
oh,
that too. Like with the
I
harmonica,
honestly,
like you couldn't even look at yourself in the mirror.
I couldn't even look at myself. And I told him, I'm like, I'm not even laughing at you. I'm laughing at myself because this is so ridiculous. I had such a fun time. And I think we need that right now. Like the world is such a heavy place. And I'm someone who takes life very seriously sometimes. So I just thought, you know, I think we could use some more comedy. And I had a blast. It was so ridiculous. And I just laughed that whole night, like filming it and editing it. And I, you know, sent it to him late that night. And I was just like having a blast. So,
So
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
is this all on the Instagram stories? Because they're gone now. But
Yeah,
is that,
maybe,
can I find that somewhere else?
I don't think so. Maybe I should post it on my profile.
Yeah.
It'll be there permanently.
Make it a YouTube video or something.
Yeah, I should. Like I have the files, so I should just upload it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was
Send
fun.
send me a couple too, and I'll put it in a promo clip for this episode.
Sure. We should.
Yeah. Oh no, that was funny. I
Uh,
even messaged him. I messaged him afterwards because I had seen he had commented on it. So I was like, "Oh, dude, like you got clapped back," and he's like, "Well, what do you mean?" I was like, "You should dress up like her, and do so, like act like her, and post that." Right? I don't think he will though. He's like, "Well, I wouldn't know what to do." I said, "It's easy. Just pop a bottle of wine and draw a bath."
literally. Anyone that knows me knows that that's my life.
Yeah. Oh no, I needed that too. You had me laughing pretty good the other day, so thank you for that. That was good.
Oh, of course. I'm so glad to hear that. And I had quite a few good responses from people and people saying that they really enjoyed it or that they needed it or that it made their day. And again, like it's just such a different thing for me to explore because I'm not really a comedian or anything like that. But I usually have people reaching out in terms of serious stuff like, oh, thanks for posting this because it meant this to me. And that's really impactful too. Don't get me wrong. But it was cool because like I said, I just think things are really heavy right now and you can't even put on the TV without getting depressed anymore. So
Right.
comedy is just as healing, you know.
Well, Twitter is getting to that point too, where you keep scrolling and it's always bad stuff. Well, a lot of it is bad stuff, and it's like, yeah, just something lighthearted is good for the soul every once in a while.
Totally. I totally agree.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out my my microphone because it looks like Zoom isn't switching to my face. Not that that is a bad thing, but
Oh my gosh.
Yep. I got it.
So I
Sorry.
have a glass of water and a glass of wine, and I'm not sure which one I'm going to sip from yet.
both.
Both.
Do
Yeah.
both. Go shot for shot.
Yeah. Try to balance it out.
What kind of wine are you
But, yeah.
drinking?
Just some white wine. I find I love red, but my problem is the reds I buy are fairly expensive and they have a cork. And the problem is I live alone, so it doesn't taste as good the next day. So then I have to drink the whole bottle, and that's a problem. So I started buying some cheaper white wine with a screw cap so I can put it in my fridge and have leftovers, and it doesn't taste terrible. So that's the logic. That's the wine logic.
Is there like, so I'm not a big wine drinker at all. So is there like white wine is typically for a specific like me doesn't it go with meals? Am I wrong? Right? So like
you're
if you're
totally
eating a
right.
certain thing, you drink white wine, and if you're drinking another or eating another thing, you would then have red, right? So what's the difference? When would you normally have white and then red?
That's a really good question. I wish I could say that with all certainty, but I can't. I think white is
I
good with like chicken and pork and like that kind of thing, from what Google has told me in the past. Uh, red, I don't know. I usually have red wine with like something Italian, like a heavier pasta or something like that. But then again, I
But-
just love red wine.
and
So
then
I
there's
don't know.
also a difference between red wines, I believe. Like,
Yeah, it's a huge spectrum of wines.
yeah. I used to work in a liquor store way
Oh,
back,
cool.
but I forget all of that.
Do you drink wine, Mark?
No.
No.
Well, I shouldn't say it depends on which wine it is, I guess. But in generally, no.
Depends
You know
on
who
how many
does drink
beers you
wine?
had first.
Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna say, you
Start-
know who does drink wine? Matt, as you can see in
Oh,
the
does
video.
he? Does he?
Yeah, he does. I think he drinks everything though. But put
Whatever's
anything in
given.
front of that guy and he'll drink it.
Yeah, whatever's given to him, he'll drink it.
Yes, pretty much, yeah.
So, okay, I'm gonna keep the topic on Matt here a little bit longer. Is I
Sure.
watched the Jim Beam thing, and I noticed that Matt was playing guitar for you there, right? So
Yeah.
like, how does that work? Like, are you guys just acquaintances and you help each other out, or are you guys like, is he legit the guitar player of your band, or like, how does that work?
Yeah, great question. So I'm from Ontario and I moved here to Calgary about a year ago, and I knew a handful of artists, and Matt was not one of them. We actually ended up playing a show about a year ago on the same bill, and that's when we met. And we didn't really become that close of friends, really. We just kind of kept in contact on like social media and whatever. You know, you just network and you meet people. So this year, I totally forgot that I applied to the Jim Beam National Talent Search. It's just the year of COVID, and you just, I don't know, you get emails and you apply to stuff and you forget. So they contacted me and they were like, hey, you're a finalist. And I was like, okay, cool. I don't really remember even applying, but great. So they changed it this year because typically they do like a battle of the bands in person, and they have like different bands perform at a local bar, and I guess the winners get to perform in like the next year's Canadian Music Week or whatever. Huge like event in Toronto. So this year it was quite different because of COVID, right? So they were like, well, we can't have people performing in bars. It just wasn't happening anymore. They canceled all the shows. So they decided to go virtual, which meant that we got to record a music video like live off the floor at the National Music Center here in Calgary, which is pretty awesome. And yeah, I literally was like, okay, so do I want to do this solo or do I want to do this as a band? And I do a lot of solo stuff and it's fine. And I've done it for close to 10 years now, but I think there's just something different about the energy of a band, and doing something with a band live is fun. So I posted it on Facebook and I was like, hey, does anyone want to like play for this gig? And most people from Calgary, if you tell them you're doing anything at the National Music Center or Studio Bell, it's a really well-known venue. And they also have like the Canadian Hall of Fame and just really cool exhibits at this place too. So I guess it's an exciting thing if you're a local here. But Matt was like the first person who was like, oh, I'll do it. And I was like, cool. So essentially I hired him to like be my guitar player. And then he introduced me to his best friend, Sean Peters, who is on bass, and he's an awesome guy too. And yeah, ever since then, like, I was just like, oh my God, like, how have we not been friends before? And it really just kind of brought us together in a year and in a time where there's so much separation and division. And yeah, we just became like really close friends after that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So are you guys like because you guys did so well together, do you think, is there going to be more of that, do you think? Like you guys playing together again?
I would hope
Yeah.
so, yeah, for sure. Like I said, I've covered some of his songs just because I genuinely love his music so much. Like I listen to every genre, and I haven't heard a record like his in a really long time. And I know that you guys have heard his music as well.
Yep.
It's very, very much reminiscent of stuff I grew up on. Like my parents always listened to rock and roll, and it just kind of reminded me, it was almost nostalgic in a way. It's just like, oh, this is like really just genuinely good music. And it wasn't overproduced, and the quality was great, and lyrically it was great. And yeah, so I've covered some of his stuff, and he's like, oh, you should record it or like do it at a live show. And yeah, like there's talks of doing stuff in the future for sure.
Cool.
His music always reminds me of the Harpoonist, Harpoonist and Axe Murderer. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
You should look him up. Because it has a Matt Blaze vibe.
Oh yeah.
If you like Matt's music, you'll enjoy the Harpoonist too.
Cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yep.
So in the time of COVID, like all this crappy year that we've been going through, has there been a lot of like, have you had a chance to get a lot of writing done and like planning for like where you're going to go in your career and where you'll take it when like COVID is not necessarily over, but like when the pandemic is over?
It's a really good question. I've definitely done some writing, but to be honest with you, like my writing is something that's just coming back. So as a bit of a quick backstory, like moving across the country last year was very significant for me. And I'm someone who was always a writer from the time I was a kid. So it's something that I identified with, and it was just always a part of me. So living in Toronto for about 3 years and networking and doing a music program and just like really getting lost in the middle of the industry came with a lot, professionally and personally. And it ended up kind of chewing me up and spitting me out. So within the past, I would say, I don't know, a couple years, like I ended up walking out of that feeling really drained, really uninspired, and just depleted. And a huge part of trying to recover was moving to Calgary, because I knew like a handful of artists, so I knew I wasn't going to be alone. And it just felt like the fresh start that I needed. Like my intention was like, okay, cool. I gotta get out of here and get out of some toxic situations and write and record and like, let's get the show back on the road. So this year for me was going to be like that anyways. And the pandemic just kind of added to that, if that makes any sense. Because I think a lot of people were, I feel, or at least I was around a lot of people that were really grinding and they were at their peak and everything was moving forward. Whereas like I was at a point where a lot of people are at right now, where they're reflecting on their life and they're trying to figure out how to move forward. But I was already doing that. So I think the pandemic just makes me feel less alone in that process.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Because I'm like, wow, people finally know what it feels like to feel really lost.
Yeah.
I'm someone who's always kind of like known what my path is and what I feel my purpose is or whatever. Like music's always been my number one, and I've always been a writer and I've always been a performer, and this has always been my identity. And when I lost that, I was like, what am I doing with my life? You know? So
yeah, you didn't have something to fall back on, kind of thing.
yeah, I mean, and even if I did, because like I do graphic design and I do a lot of visual art and I make jewelry and I have all these creative things, but there's just something inside me that doesn't feel complete, just doesn't feel right
Right.
when I
Yes.
don't do music.
I saw your Etsy store. It's
Cool.
yeah, pretty interesting stuff. I might have to do some gift shopping or something.
That's
What is
awesome.
that? Is that like jewelry?
Yeah.
Yeah. I never post about it, but I also do a lot of like men's bracelets. Matt has a lot of them.
I was just
Matt
about to
will
say, is
model.
that where is that where Matt gets all of them?
Yeah, he's got some cool
Oh,
jewelry from me that I've
nice.
made. I should really sell more men's bracelets. My store online is like a lot of just feminine
I used
jewelry.
I used to wear bracelets all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Well, we
happened.
gotta make that come back then. Yeah, but anyways, like this year has been a lot for everyone, and I just feel like, um, as lame as it may be to say, like I just feel less alone because it's like I'm not the only one that's not doing gigs. Nobody's doing gigs.
Right.
And it's not that I don't want people to do gigs, but it's just like it gives everyone the sense that I had for the past couple of years of just being torn up about the industry and what my
Right.
experience was. So I feel like in a way I have more support now because everyone knows how shitty it feels. and and also like returning to music feels so much better too because even doing this Jim Beam thing, like I was just so happy to be back on a stage. Like it had been so long and I just felt like, oh yeah, just all kind of naturally came back and I was like, yeah, I can do this because for a while I was, you know, just questioning myself like every artist does at some point on their journey.
Yeah. So this Jim Beam thing is, you said you applied for it yourself, and then what? Is it, how do they go through the process of, picking the final artist? Because you won in the local. How did
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah. So you do apply. I guess it's very similar to applying for a grant or anything else. Like you have to send in like a bio and some stuff about your past and what you've done and some recordings and maybe some videos and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And a ton of people apply, right? Like this is Canada wide, so they have so much stuff to sift through. And
Yeah.
I guess essentially they end up picking 5, like a top 5 in 8 cities across the country. And then those 5 this year got to like record a music video. And they did like a virtual tour, which is cool, instead of doing everything in person this year. So yeah, and then people vote. So it was open for like 3 weeks and I was just like promote. Like it was open to online voting and it was unreal to see so many people supporting. Like it blew my mind because I forgot that, I mean, I'm not from here, right? So it's pretty unreal when I have family back in Ontario or in Newfoundland or in Vancouver, like showing their support, like to see it kind of spread like that is really awesome.
For
It's
sure.
really cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So, as for the prize, you got to record a video. Was there anything else that was like? Did you get money? I mean, I don't need to know how much money you got if you did get money, but is there something else attached to that aside from the
Like
video?
a recording maybe, or
Yeah, recording deal. I don't know.
Yeah, so I didn't even know what the winning situation was going to be. So essentially, they have one winner out of the entire country for the grand prize, which is to go perform in Toronto at this big music festival. Obviously, it's next year because this year it's not happening, unfortunately. So that's the Canadian Music Week Festival, and basically they get like a spot on one of the main stages, and they also get. I don't think it's a cash prize. I think it's like a Long and McQuaid music gift card, but it's like a fairly significant amount of money to put towards music. And what I didn't realize was that they do have winners for each region. So we were very lucky to win the region of Calgary, which is really awesome. And there was a little bit of money, but not a ton of money. And yeah, the video and the recording, like usually music videos, I've done music videos in the past, they're very expensive to do. So, I mean, it wasn't a loss for me at all, because I mean, I got to show up and go to the National Music Center and do a video. So, I mean, it wasn't a loss at all for me anyway.
Right.
Yeah. I don't really know, to be honest with you, what they're going to do with the rest of the regional winners. Like, I think some of us may be invited to this music festival. I'm not really sure.
So creating that music video, was it just show up, run through the song a couple times and done? Or
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, the
Really?
only
Oh.
thing that was different was that there was COVID precautions, right? So we had to
Right.
sign so many releases, basically just stating that, you know, we have to wear a mask up until we're like literally on the stage in our positions and the cameras start rolling, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, we were measured, like we had to be like the 6 feet apart on stage and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, that was the only thing that was different, really.
Was all the equipment that was used, that was all like your guys' own, like your own equipment?
So we brought our own equipment in terms of instruments, but at the National Music Center, they wanted to display some of their items as well. So there was cool stuff in the background. Like they always have amazing pianos and stuff like that. So some of it wasn't ours.
Right.
It's just kind of like a cool backdrop, I think.
Was it an all day kind of thing, or a half day, or like how long were you there for?
It's funny. I was just going to mention, we showed up at 8:00 in the morning. So it was an early gig for us, I guess, because they only have a certain amount of time to do the 5 bands and they spread it within a couple days span. So yeah, we showed up at 8. We did like a load in. We had to check in with people, get some passes, like pretty high security. Make sure all of our release forms were signed, all that kind of stuff. And then we set up, and then we did some sound checks, tried to get some levels mixed, and then we went into the studio after as well to like just hear back some of our takes and that kind of thing. And yeah, I would say it was like half a day. Like we were out of there by noon, really.
So Joel and I usually, when some like a topic that, like this comes up, we usually go into a little bit of detail, like who, in this case, who would own that video? You know, is it owned by whoever produced it, or is it because of it's your song? So do you own it? Do you get a copy of the original video? How does that work?
Yeah. Or Jim Beam owns it now.
Sponsor me. Every time I see Jim Beam now, I'm like, you should sponsor me. Yeah, no, it's a great question.
I'll drop the wine. I'll drink Jim Beam from now on.
Yeah, everywhere I go, Jim Beam. No, it's honestly, that's such a great question, Mark, because, well, as we know in the music industry, things can be tricky in terms of legalities and contracts and that kind of thing. So fortunately, in this case, I was given copies of the video to use as I wish. So it's on my YouTube, it's on my Instagram. Like obviously when the voting was open, like we were encouraged to tag them and that kind of thing. But in terms of ownership, like I definitely have a copy and it's mine to share. So that's a positive for sure.
Yeah. Because I can, you know, think of scenarios where they go like, well, we recorded it, so it's all ours now. Like the song is yours, but the video is mine. You know,
yeah.
I don't know why this is always such a struggle in the music industry. Like, I understand that you know, money has to be made, and I know things have to be on paper, but I always feel that the artists get the shit out on the stick kind of thing.
I agree with that too. I feel like the industry's pretty crooked.
And I don't know if that's because of the number of parties involved. You know, like you have the artist, you have the producer, you have the writer, you have the guy that mixes the stuff. the people that store the data. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of people that need to get paid, and then it gets so diluted that the artist is usually the last one to get paid, which I don't think is fair. But
For sure, especially when you're an independent artist and you're going up against these major companies and you know that they're multi-million-dollar companies.
yeah,
Like at the end of the day, like I know that people do have to show up, and there's video guys that flew in and that kind of thing, and they don't necessarily represent Jim Beam, and they're not hired by Jim Beam. But at the same time, like there's a lot of sponsors that are involved in this kind of thing too, right? So like at the end of the day, I agree with you, because for artists, copyrights are important and ownership is important, royalties are important, because these days that's where you're making your money. Because guess what? We can't tour right now.
yeah,
And Spotify is paying you 0.00000, one per stream. And it's not like it used to be. When I recorded and put out my first single in 2014, I made money on iTunes because people paid 99 cents at that time. So it was easy for me to like put out my first song ever and actually make a couple $100 easily, like within the first couple months. And that doesn't happen anymore. So, I mean, revenue streams are really tricky to figure out. So yeah, it's tough. And when you enter these kinds of things, you're right. A lot of the times there's fine print and there's contracts, and you really have to look out for yourself, because as much as the exposure of a lot of these things is great, like at the end of the day, exposure doesn't pay your bills either, right? So
that's right. That's right. My background is in web design, and I get a lot of that too. Like, oh, can you build this website for us? You'll get lots of exposure. Yeah, that's fine, but that doesn't pay my mortgage.
Exactly. That's the thing that they try to sell to artists all the time, and it's been like that for a long time, like as long as I can remember, especially in the digital age, right? It's like it's not the record label thing anymore. Now it's like, well, exposure. We can give you exposure. It's like, well, everyone has exposure now in the palm of their hand, really.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like do you find that you've got a lot more control now, like in 2020 than you would have in 2015, maybe? Like control, what I mean, you know what I mean, right? Like in ownership, I guess.
I would say, yeah.
And it's the exposure thing too. Like with social media, you can expose yourself.
I expose myself too much on social media.
but you know what I mean, right? It's like you don't need a label. You don't need another company to give you that exposure. You can do it yourself. If you have an Instagram account, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, you can get your followers that way. So you don't need a third party to give you that extra promotion. So I don't know. It seems all a little backwards nowadays, but
yeah, no, I totally agree.
I guess if you release a record on vinyl, that's where a little bit of money comes in.
Yeah,
I think your let's say you have, like we have Matt's records here.
I have one too.
Yeah. You can make a little bit of money by selling a record. Yeah, it's harder to sell a record than, somebody clicks on Spotify and go. But when it does sell, you actually make some money on it. So
yeah, for sure.
That's why I'm in the record business and not so much in the streaming business.
Yeah. I think merch is still a huge part of artists' revenue streams these days, for sure.
Yeah.
And in terms of the whole social media thing, like for me, I treat social media as just this authentic channel. Like it's not a place where I pretend to be anything else. Like I find people on Instagram and they seem to stick with me. Not everybody, but I mean, I've been on Instagram since it started, which was quite a long time ago. And there's people that have been following my life and the ups and downs over the years. And it's really awesome to like build those connections, because I think that's what it should be about. Like if you're going to connect over art, or you're going to connect over a loss of some sort in your life, that's what life is, right? Like there's no such thing as like an overnight success. And if there is, like it kind of dies down So these promises of like exposure and promises of whatever label making you big, I mean, it's like how much authenticity is bleeding through into that, right? Because once you start dealing with a team of people that aren't necessarily your chosen team of people, like from what I've seen, they kind of have control, creative control of who
Right.
they want you to
Well,
be.
that's
And
that's
never
exactly like was that last week? Did you guys see that thing that Dave Chappelle put out? The Unspoken video?
no.
Oh man, you guys got to look that up. It might be on YouTube now, but there was a lot of comedians that were blasting it a week or two ago. So it's about almost 20 minutes long, but he's telling the story of like when he signed the deal of the Chappelle show to Comedy Central, and how like now you can stream it on HBO and Netflix, and what he likes about like spoiler alert here, you guys, but I suggest that you go out and watch.
La 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 la.
Yeah. I really suggest you go out and watch it, because it's really talking about, he's telling the story of the incidents of like what you're saying is how the industry took like everything from him, right? It's his name, it was his show, it's everything. They made it sound good. He signs the deal. Now you can get it for free on HBO and Netflix, and he doesn't get a red cent for it. So essentially he's asking you to not watch it. Like, don't go and stream the show is what he's saying in it. And he actually asked Netflix to take it down, and they did. So it's not even on Netflix anymore. Like, he's like, that's why Netflix kicks ass, because they know that I'm right. Like shit. Like I say, yeah, go check it out. It's called Unforgiven, I think is what it was called. And it's Dave Chappelle. It's about 18 minutes long. Awesome story though. So good.
Wow.
But it just goes to show like that he was like, he's talking about how like do you guys remember like when he left the show and everyone was saying he was crazy and all that crap going on, that he was on drugs and everything, and he addresses that too, and he was like, there was nothing wrong with me at all. He's like, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke. He's like, I do now because you guys drove me to that insanity. Like, yeah. So, but
I'd believe
now, oh, for sure. And now he's got the power to knock on Netflix's door and be like, can you stop airing that? And they're like, yeah, for sure, we'll take it down. So it's like a big like FU to the industry. Yeah, awesome story. I suggest you check it out. But that's the kind of world that we're in. Like that's the shit that COVID's bringing out, right? Like you're getting more of that creative control. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I was never a Dave Chappelle fan, so I kind of ignored whatever he said. But yeah, I'll have a look at it.
It's a good story, definitely.
It sounds like it, yeah. Like for me, I think at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself. You gotta like when you go to bed and you have those final thoughts of the night, like you gotta be good with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think
agree.
that's so important. And I mean, it's just like, is it really worth it? I mean, I get that people want to be famous or they want to be known or they want to be seen or loved or whatever. And you know, this has been around for so many years. Like this is not new. The industry's changed a lot, but this whole idea of like signing on the dotted line, this goes back a long time.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's craving some authentic art these days, I think. And I find a lot of that is in this indie world. It's not the top 40 music that's changing people's lives, I don't think. There's nothing wrong with top 40 music. Like there's a time and a place for it, right? But I think there's a lot of great artists out there that don't have a major label behind them.
I'm trying to think if I can name 5 songs out of the top 40 right now. I don't think I can even.
No, and they all started to sound the same, right?
Yeah.
Like, I love putting on the radio or even just letting my Spotify go sometimes when I'm getting ready for the day or whatever, and I hear a really distinct voice and you know who it is because you're like, oh yeah, that's a really cool artist, and it's their identity stands out. I like that because there's just so much music out there right now, and you're like, oh, I thought it was this person because it sounds exactly the same.
Yeah,
right.
I have that with country artists. All like, I mean, of course there are exceptions, but especially female country artists.
Yeah,
they all sound the same as long as they're on the radio. Like if you have the more indie country artists, those you can kind of, they have a more distinctive voice, but apparently not enough for radio because you don't hear them on the radio.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
Do you think that's like a production touch to it? Like, so like somebody who's indie, country singer who's indie is like, sounds a little different and then gets signed to a label, and then the producer's like, oh, chiseling away at their art and then make it sound more mainstream. Do you think that's what's happening there?
could be because the all the country music is coming from Nashville, and
Mhm.
everybody in Nashville knows everybody in Nashville. So
Yeah.
I'm guessing a lot of producers listen to each other and like each other's productions and pick up on things, and that's just
Right.
becoming one big
Right.
mash of the same old now. And but if you have we have country artists in Saskatchewan, a lot of them. Like we had Chris Henderson, for example. He does not sound like a Nashville artist, which I like because I'm not a country fan, but
It sounds like an artist, but you mean like a country, like a typical country singer is what
yeah,
you mean, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. I think it has something to do with Nashville itself, not so much with country, but more with the music that's coming out of Nashville and going to the radio. That all sounds the same.
Yeah, this is why I'm glad I'm not in country either, because I
Yeah.
kind of just am in my own lane. And even
Yep.
here in Calgary, like the country scene is tough. It's super competitive, and
I
when it
bet,
comes
yeah.
to country radio, it's almost impossible to get on. Almost impossible.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
My wife is a country fan, and whenever she listens to country radio, it's like, who's this? And then she names a name because, well, usually she doesn't name a name because she doesn't know who the artist is. But they all, most of them sound the same. And then every once in a while, there's a voice in there that is different, and then it's usually a '90s country artist.
Yeah.
Because
I love '90s.
sounded,
I love the '90s
yeah,
jams.
yeah.
I really do.
Yes.
Yeah, '90s jams all day. Like I grew up on Jagged Little Pill, like that's the
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
that I like. I fucking
Al.
love that.
That's Al Morris.
It's just so good. But
That was-
I was just gonna say, like, on this topic of country radio and stuff, and just the industry in general, I just think it's becoming really formulaic, right? And it's just like I don't like that at all. Like as a songwriter, as someone who's like pretty much born a songwriter and always wrote about my feelings and processed things, and it was always this cathartic, meaningful thing. It's just like showing up with a formula to write a hit song. There's something about it that just doesn't sit right for me personally. Like,
but
I don't know.
that's been happening for not centuries because that's a little long, but decades.
Decades for sure. For
But
sure.
like Motown, that's when it all
Yeah.
started. They had
Yep.
a formula. They pushed out the songs all the same. Well,
They
pretty
know
much
it works.
the same.
They know it
Yep.
sells,
Yeah, exactly. So we keep
And
doing the
I
same
get
thing.
it. Totally. And it's like you said, it's a business, right? And I get it. But at the same time, like I think my artist self is just like I'm craving some good music,
Yeah, for sure.
When you come across a Matt Blaze, you're like, this is good shit.
It's funny. My daughter just walks by with a whole bag of chips, and she's tiptoeing because she wants to be quiet.
That's cute.
Anyway, so
sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Go.
I was gonna ask you, so what is your process of writing? Like when you get those feelings, or is it like, how can I word this? Like, is something specific that happens to you in your life and then it just triggers an emotion and then it's like, oh, I need to put that down on paper, and that's where it starts? Or is it kind of like, do you hear like you get like a melody or a tune in your head and then it branches out from there, or both? Like, is it all of the above?
Yeah, it's all of the above. It's honestly both. There are times when I have just like a really specific melody idea in my head and it's hard to articulate it, but I always try to like, run to my phone and get my voice notes or grab my guitar. It depends. But But lately I'm really struggling with melodies, and I think it's because we hear so many of them all the time, and it's hard to not replicate what you hear subconsciously, right? So I think once you write songs for 10 years, you're just like, man, my melody part of my brain is running a little dry. So I would consider myself to always be writing lyrics. Like I'm always thinking about things and processing things, and whether it's something I'm experiencing with my emotions or just stuff I'm witnessing or someone else I know is going through, like there's always something to write about. Like I don't have a problem finding stuff to talk about or stuff to write about. I've always have a lot going in my head. Like I'm a fairly analytical person, and I like to think about things and have deep thoughts and that kind of stuff. So in terms of lyric writing, I mean, I have so many ideas, but I yeah, have been struggling with melodies lately. But you know, honestly, there's times when it'll both come out of me and I'll write a song in 5 minutes and that ends up being the final song that I bring in to record. It's
Right.
kind of weird. Like sometimes I'll just have lyrics and sit down with my guitar, and I don't know how it goes together, but it does.
Right.
I wish that happened more than it does, but sometimes that does happen.
Do you ever take lyrics and you look at them, it's like, I can't find a melody for this, and then you just send the document to another artist and they can come up with a melody for you?
That's kind of where I'm at right now, honestly. Like I've never really been a big co-writer. There's nothing wrong with co-writing. I'm trying to stay open to it. I know it's really big in the country field because a lot of my country friends co-write all the time. Like a lot of them don't write their own stuff. But as someone who's like always written 100% of my own stuff, I have a hard time with co-writes sometimes. Coming from the perspective of like lyrics or trying to describe a particular emotion I'm feeling or a particular experience, it's hard sometimes for people to say what you feel, if that makes sense. But if I come from, like, if I'm trying to explain a certain, you know, situation that happened and someone didn't experience it, they may not say it in the way that I would say it. So I think that's why I've had problems with co-writing. But if I approach it with what you just suggested and I show up with lyrics and a story and maybe show up with someone else who has like really strong melody ideas, then maybe we could have a successful co-write.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I don't write melodies, so I can't help you, but you know. So you moved to Calgary last year, you said?
Yeah, it was last September, at the very end of September of 2019. Yeah.
Shit, right before COVID.
Well, that's the thing. So I show up here, it was basically October, right? And a couple months go by, my family flew out from Ontario. We had Christmas together. That's the last time I saw them. And we had a great time in the mountains. We went out to Banff and we just stayed out like literally in the middle of mountains. It was awesome. January rolled around. I flew back to Toronto for a couple things. And then I came back in February. And the next thing you know, like a month later, all this stuff goes down. I signed with like a local booking agency. So I started getting some gigs and everything just tanked.
Right.
And I was like, this kind of sucks. And also like I was starting to get some, like I said, local gigs, like meeting other artists. And it's a very tight-knit circle here. It's almost like a small town. Like it reminds me of where I'm from in Ontario. Like it's a city, but like the core group of artists, like everybody kind of knows everybody. So it doesn't really take long to become acquainted with people. So, I mean, I did a lot of legwork in that time, but it just kind of sucks that the pandemic hit just as I was starting to make all these connections and hang out with these people and whatever, and get these gigs and get my name out there locally, because here I'm across the country, right? So people don't know me here.
Yeah.
Like I'm starting from ground zero and building relationships with venues and this kind of thing, right? And when the pandemic happened, like I'm not as fortunate as someone who's from here to get those odd social distancing shows because I don't have those relationships yet. So it's been challenging for sure.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about that. What's the coolest thing about Calgary that you've discovered? But probably you didn't discover too much yet.
You know, it's surprising how much I I did discover in such a short amount of time before the pandemic. Like, I'm
Okay.
really glad that when I came out here, like, I stayed with my friend's mom for a couple months before I found a place, and we went on a lot of like day trips, and we drove around, and she showed me the ropes, and it was good to just have someone to explore with for a couple months before I felt a little bit more grounded and settled, right? Um, yeah, I mean, I have experienced quite a bit here. The weirdest thing though is that there have been moments here, but right before the pandemic, I would say about this time last year, people fly out here a lot from Toronto. So I was at a venue here. It's called the King Eddie, and it's like a restaurant bar, and it's a very popular venue for artists. And every time I go there, I see people I know. And there was one night in particular where people flew out from Toronto, like industry people that I know. And I was also in this room of people, of artists that some of them I met in Toronto, some of them I knew and met here in Calgary. And I was just looking around and I was like, I'm across the country and I know more people in this room right now than I would know back in Toronto. Like, it was so bizarre. It was so bizarre because in Toronto, it's a huge city, right? And people don't really congregate in the same way. And there's just something about the community here. I don't know, like when there's a big event going on, like everyone's there. So
That's got to be a good feeling though, right? Like that's a good feeling though. It's like, man, I'm in the right spot. Like I'm where I need to be right now, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think I really needed that because honestly, I haven't felt that in a really long time. Because even if I go back to my hometown or I go back to somewhere like Toronto, it's like I don't necessarily get that feeling anymore. So to feel that somewhere new is pretty special, really. Like, it made me feel exactly like what you just said. Like, it's made me feel like I am where I'm supposed to be right now. And I don't know how long I'm supposed to be here, but I feel like with the experiences I've had here so far, even through a pandemic, the people that I've met have been really significant on my journey in many ways. And I just kind of feel like, yeah, I'm supposed to be here. As hard as it is. I mean, my entire family lives in Ontario, so it's hard. This year, it's especially hard because the holidays are coming up, and I don't think anyone's going to be able to travel this year. So it's really challenging at times, but at the same time, like, as long as everyone stays healthy, that's really the top priority. Because then one day I'll be able to go back, and maybe I can go back with some of my friends that I've made in Alberta, and we can tour in Ontario, and that'll be another full circle moment.
Yeah,
for sure.
I know how you feel because I was imported from Holland here, and my parents and friends and family are still back there.
Wow.
So I know how you feel, but I also know how you feel when that moment hits where you walk around town here or in Prince Albert, which is a city close to here, and people start to recognize you. And I mean, I'm not a singer or anything, but people will say, "Hey, Mark," it's like, "Oh yeah, okay, cool."
It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, and then yeah, so I kind of understand what you're feeling. I have a family, and I understand you're by yourself, so that's a little bit different. But
For sure. But you
yeah,
get the gist of it. I mean, you know what it's
yeah,
like to pack up and leave, and you basically have nothing. I mean,
yep, yep.
It's not an easy path, but I've done it a couple times. Like, I'm from Northern Ontario, and I've lived in Montreal alone. I've lived in Toronto alone. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
live in Calgary alone. I mean, I've done it. I've done it to kind of pursue my career and different opportunities and that kind of thing. But honestly, like, out of all the places I've lived, I think this is the most special place that I've lived. And this has been, yeah, like I said, a really significant place to meet people that I feel are kind of on my wavelength. Like,
Mhm.
I don't get that very often. I've met a lot of people, I've traveled to a lot of places, and you don't always meet your people.
No,
Unfortunately.
and Calgary in itself is a cool city, I think. My wife has family there, and we stay there occasionally, usually at least once a year. Um, so yeah, it's not like I know the city or anything, but the times I've been there, it's I like it.
Yeah, me too. I think I figured it out pretty quickly, which is nice because when I first got here, I was really overwhelmed and I didn't know where anything was.
Yeah.
It helped too that I did like travel here and I visited here beforehand, like before I just up and moved. So that helped a
Right.
bit. But I think I've done pretty well considering the year.
There's Google Maps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What do you have anything planned for the holidays with the family? Like, I'm assuming that it's going to be like Zoom calls, right? With people back
Yeah,
home.
I just started mailing some stuff. Canada Post is my life right now, which is pretty expensive to be honest with you. But I'm
Oh, I
not
know.
sending that. Oh yeah, love you Canada Post, but wow, it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah, I'm just sending like little stocking stuffers, and like you can always do, e-gift cards now. Like my mom's birthday is at the end of December, and Christmas is happening, and so I might just start doing some stuff online, to be honest with you. But we send cards. Like I love snail mail. I love getting a card in the mail. It's nice.
I saw that was on your stories, right? That you sent one a while ago to a friend of yours in the States, and they just
Yeah,
got it or something. Yeah.
totally.
Okay.
I like it. I try to keep that alive. It's just like a personal touch. And I mean, we all talk on, Instagram, or we do voice memos, or we call and whatever. But it's, I don't know, there's something about a handwritten note or a card or whatever. It's just kind of nice.
You know what? I couldn't agree more with you. Like I don't remember. I remember back in like I think it was like grade 6. The whole class, we had done like a pen pal thing with kids in
So that
Regina.
was 25 years ago for you then.
Is that how long ago that was? I don't. How old is somebody in grade 6? 13?
12-ish, 12, 13, I don't know. Or 11. I was definitely 11, turning 12. But it depends when
yeah.
your birthday is. My birthday's in the fall.
I usually try to calculate it grade plus 4-ish is age. Grade.
So 10, 11.
Yeah.
Anyways, what I was getting at was that we had done like a pen pal kind of thing. Yeah, grade 6 math. But yeah, like, and I remember writing letters to like this other school in Regina, done a pen pal kind of thing there. That was always fun, getting letters from like, even though then it was strangers, but you got to know them. And then
For sure.
my auntie was a pretty big storyteller, and she would randomly write us like 10-page letters. That was always fun to get those in the mail. But I totally, oh yeah, like it was like she would write a whole freaking story that she would just make, and she would use us as characters in the story.
I love it.
Yeah.
That reminds me of like today, I literally got one of my like great aunts in Newfoundland. She writes an annual Christmas poem about the year. And I got it in the mail today, and I was so excited because it's very similar to that. Like she'll write about whatever happened in the year in like this really nice condensed poem, and everything rhymes. And I don't know, it's cool. It's like a Christmas letter you get every year.
So for this year, it was a pretty short poem then?
It really was.
Yeah.
So we were basically in a bubble this year.
Yeah.
And it was actually pretty short.
Huh.
But it's cool. I look forward to it every year.
I read an article, it must have been a couple of days ago, about some prisons in the US still have pen pal programs going. So that the inmates are not as lonely, I guess. So
frick, man, they all got like cell phones now. They're on TikTok.
In jail?
Oh hell yeah.
Oh my god. To.
No, they got them. You can find them on TikTok for sure.
They probably eat better now too. I remember before everyone used to say like, "Oh, they eat plain bread and peanut butter and jam," and I'm like, okay. And they probably eat like queens at this point, I think.
Well, if you don't like peanut butter on your bread, don't go to jail.
Yeah. What if you're allergic? Maybe that's the point.
Yeah.
then you just die in jail. Like that's your punishment. It's peanut butter.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say something really bad.
You were gonna say let him die in jail?
Yeah.
I think it depends on the offense.
Save some taxpayers' money. But you can't say that.
Yeah.
So I didn't.
I think there's a lot of people in jail that probably shouldn't or don't need to be in there. Like the marijuana charges, isn't there like a lot of people doing a lot of time for like having an ounce of pot? Is that still going on?
Apparently,
Like
that's a bigger offense than something
murder?
in our eyes. Well, probably not that, but I think whatever. This is one of those debates that you can
go on
talk about
forever about.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No.
I don't know. Let's change the topic, I suppose.
This is downhill from here.
Yeah. This isn't going anywhere good.
Well, it was nice talking to you guys. See you later.
Oh my gosh.
So are you writing on a regular basis now? I mean, you're a singer-songwriter, so you are, but are you working on like an album or an EP, or is that something not on your mind at all?
I still feel like I don't write as much as I used to, and I still really struggle with that. I think the more you overthink it, the worse it is, because then it stops coming to you naturally, right? So lyrics come to me all the time. So I would say, if not every day, every second day, I could definitely I'm always jotting down lyrics. I don't always take time to like make full songs at this point, which kind of sucks. And I feel like I probably should work on some full length songs. I mean, ideally, I would love to put out another record and love to put out another EP and this kind of thing. It's also very expensive, and I'm trying to figure out who my next producers should be and that kind of thing. So my focus should really just be on writing and like just keep writing. I think for a while when I got really down and I just kind of lost inspiration, I got really overwhelmed with trying to find a new producer and trying to find the right group of people to work with on the next project, because that's a stressful thing. Like if you're not paired up with the right people, it's not a good scene. And it's really just, it's hard on you as an artist if you work with people that don't have your best interests at heart. And I think I was kind of in a situation like that. So but then again, if you just focus on that, you're never going to get anything done. So I'm trying to not focus on like finding the right people and just trying to take it as it comes. I have a hard time sitting down and forcing things to come out. I'm someone who just kind of is trying to let things flow right now as much as I can.
Yeah, and if I compare, like I said, I'm not a musician or anything, but I am a web designer. So I know that if there's, you know, if I have to force myself to design something, then all of a sudden this big wall just builds itself up, and then nothing's going to happen because there's that huge block in front of you. And then I just say, fuck it, I'll do something else. And then,
exactly.
You know, and then usually when after doing something completely different, then all of a sudden the inspiration comes back and it's like, oh, I got this now. And then you whip up a website in an afternoon, for example.
Exactly. I think it's a flow. I'm trying to see it as a flow. It's hard when you're trying to get stuff done and be productive, but when that's exactly it. When you put that pressure on yourself, or when you start to think everyone's putting that pressure on you, or you're comparing yourself to other people getting stuff done, it's not good for your mental health, and it's not good for your creativity. Sure. You know, that's the stuff that blocks your creativity. So you're right. The minute you start doing something else, or the minute you stop obsessing about it, is like when you make enough space in your brain for things to flow. So I'm trying to take that approach. As hard as it is, like I would love to be spitting out songs all day long and, you know, making a new record and putting stuff out. But at the same time, I also feel that this year is hard to be inspired by stuff because there's so much chaos going on. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like I've written stuff this year, but at the same time, like I definitely have my days where I'm like, man, how do you find inspiration during these times? Like it's
Right.
tough. If you're focused on everything that's going on outside of you, it's easy to get bogged down.
Have you
Right.
written a COVID song?
No. I haven't.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, don't.
I love that that was your response, because I was like, no, I definitely haven't.
No, it's
I
I don't mind. Like, there are
It
COVID
gets
songs
old.
that, yeah, exactly, really quick. And I guess we're gonna have a
Yeah.
guest in a few weeks that wrote a COVID
yeah,
song.
it's gonna be tough to top hers, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
we have
But
Amy Gabba's coming on in a couple weeks. I don't know if I was supposed to announce that yet or not, but I just did. Spoiler alert.
nah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting her on the show. But hey, I was gonna throw it back. You know that? Okay, I want to bring it back to that Instagram story post you did of Matt Blaze, because I really feel
Iconic.
like seriously, I think you're onto something huge there. Like I don't know if it's just because I thought it was so freaking funny, but in my head, I'm thinking like, of
But
course,
dude,
like I'm not a
you were on morphine.
yeah, I was on Dilaudid, so maybe that's
He could have
maybe
watched
that's why.
anything and it would have been the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, that maybe. But I was definitely thinking like that. I feel like you're onto something there. Like even if it's an idea for a music video, where if you have a song, like if you're dressed up as Matt singing your song in the video, and then like the next line you're somebody else singing your song but as somebody else, or have other people dressed as you singing your song, like for a
That's
video.
cool. Yeah.
Something like that is what I was thinking. Or else, like I said, if we could get Matt to clap back at you on that, and then
I would die.
and get it going in a circle, like of like your musical friends and stuff, and everybody imitating each other, and like get some. I think you're onto something big there. You just got to get that snowball going.
Yeah,
So, I don't know.
I love that idea, but I think you're right, because there's something this keeps coming up in conversation, and that happens in life sometimes when you just start having conversations with people, and different people from different groups. Like I've had conversations with people lately about this, and this whole comedic aspect keeps coming up about me doing that. And I talk to people that aren't even in the arts at all. And I think you're right. I think there's something to it. I don't know what it is exactly, but I mean, for me, it's just fun. Like I get to laugh at myself and have a good time. And I think like, I don't know, like I said, we need that right now. But me as a person, I mean, my entire life, like I was very serious, very hard on myself, very perfectionistic. And to like let go in this way is awesome. Like it feels so good and so fun for me. And then it's also just a new way to relate to other people. Like it's a new way for me to connect with people, It's pretty cool.
So your music is how would you describe your style? Is it I listened to a like this afternoon was the last time I listened to a few of your songs.
Yeah.
Which
not
ones
sure.
did you listen to, Mark?
I've also deleted like a lot of my old music as well, because it was terrible quality wise.
Joel, I listen to music in the background, so I listen to it, but I don't actually pay attention
I
to
know.
what
I
the
just want to
lyrics
put you
or
on
what
the
the.
spot.
Yeah, I know you did, you dick. But so it's more down tempo, laid back.
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
So now that you had this whole comedic thing, are you starting to feel
Like a shift?
yeah, is this going to affect your songwriting and how your next song is going to roll out, kind of thing? I don't know how to ask that question.
Yeah, no, but I love that train of thought, because I think that's why I felt so lost over the past, like I said, year or two, because my musical direction has been shifting and I haven't really figured out where it's going. I think I was really used to being like kind of a folk songwriter and growing up in a fairly small community and people knowing me to look one way and to sound one way and all that stuff. But it was very much representative of who I was at the time. Like I was always true to myself, but I was a young songwriter. Like I started out young and I like put out my first album when I was like 20, 21, and it represented me at the time. It was self-produced and it was like just me processing life. And I think it was what it was, but that's why I've like I've taken down that record because it's just like quality wise not great after I've done some higher produced stuff. But also I don't really feel like it represents me anymore. So I'm trying to figure out my new sound. And it's been quite a journey because like I said, I go back to these like Jagged Little Pill records and I'm like, yeah, I really love that. Or I put on Matt's record and I really do love the more like rock aspect of things. And I grew up on that stuff. And yet I always end up writing like slower folk songs. And I'm like, where is this disconnect? Like there's a lot of passion and strong things that I stand for and I talk about on social media that I would love to translate into music. And I just kind of haven't really done that yet. So like I said earlier, in terms of songwriting, like I'm not lacking in things to say. It's just how to say it. I think that's where my struggle has been. So, and that's the same with this comedy thing too, right? It comes with, like I said, a lot of joy and a lot of laughter. But I also had a moment, you know, the day after I sent it to Matt, I was like, oh, I hope he doesn't like take that to heart, because with comedy too, I mean, when you think about comedy in general, there's so many different types of there's different senses of humor, right? And comedy can also be intentionally harmful. And obviously Matt knows me well enough to know that this was not an intentionally harmful thing. But exploring this new realm of comedy, it's interesting. It's like any form of art, right? It's just like, I think it comes down to intentions. And for me, like my intention is never to like purposely drag anybody down. Like,
right. It's not malicious in any way.
No, not at all. Like, and that's just not who I am. Like I'm not a malicious person. And yeah, it's just interesting. So who knows, like maybe this would open up something different in my brain. And I think it really just comes down to being comfortable with who you are and what you have to say and being unapologetic about it. Because I think I've censored myself for the majority of my life. And I've been on this journey over the past couple of years of just learning how to speak and finding what my voice is and what I want to stand for and what's important to me and how to go about that. You know?
So are you waiting for that moment that says, okay, this is what it's going to be? Or do you just start writing songs, and if it happens to be a rock song, it's a rock song, and if it's a blues song, it comes out as a blues song? And because
I feel like it's a mix of both. Like I would love for there to be that aha moment, but I just don't feel like it's really happened. I think I've tried to write in different styles intentionally, and it doesn't always turn out great when you're, again, trying to be formulaic about it.
right.
It's easy for me because I've been writing in the same genre with the same chords for so long that I feel like I'm a bit stuck in that. And
it always like pulls you back to it all the time.
Yeah,
right?
it's exactly. It's always going to pull me back to like write this slow, sad song.
Because that's comfortable. Because that's
exactly.
You know how to do it. Yeah.
Meanwhile, I want to say like this, and this, and say all these like bold statements, and then I sit here and I'm like, okay, let's talk about being sad again and write this slow folk song. It's just like, can you not, but this is where like co-writing comes into play, or like trying to listen to different genres. Cause I also think what you listen to really impacts you. Like it does for me. Like as a musician, what I listen to and what I consume affects my thoughts, and it affects my mood, and that then affects what I write too. So I'm not listening to slow folk songs right now.
Yeah.
So just
and the reason why I bring this up, or brought this up, if you look at Joel's hat, Took, can you come closer? Come closer.
I can try.
Don't hurt yourself. So Tyler Gilbert is the guy we had.
Tyler.
we had him on the show 2 weeks ago. 3
I
weeks,
bet you his smoke alarm is still beeping.
probably.
Anyway,
Anywho, so Tyler started off as a folk artist, and his latest record is hard rock. And he made a few EPs in between, and it's really cool to hear. Like if you listen to his first album and his last album, you don't even think it's the same person.
yeah,
Wow.
it's nothing alike.
But if you hear the songs in between, you kind of hear that his music is starting to get
The
louder.
transition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's slowly progressing into what it is now. And he says, I don't know, maybe next, or he actually did say that his new album is going to be more bluesy, I think, or something, right? So Tyler is one of
Right.
those artists that he doesn't first of all, he doesn't want to be in a box.
Well, he's got, so if I have it understood correctly, there's like specific characters in some of his songs, right? Like The Woman on the Mountain, I think that's the name of it.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember all the names of the characters, but I think there's like 6 albums, and each album is like specific to that one character in all, or else he's writing those, and those will be the next albums coming out. I think that's kind of the plan, which is very interesting to me. Like if you listen to the older stuff, you'll find each character in the older stuff, but I think now it's like, okay, this one album is about this one character that I sang about like 10 years ago or whatever. I think it was a really cool idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I'm very similar though. Like I've never wanted to be in a box. I think when it comes to genres, like obviously everyone kind of gravitates towards something. I think. I mean, I've always gravitated towards a certain thing. I listen to everything, but I've only put out pretty much one type of music.
Right. That's one question I was going to ask you a little while ago too, is like, if a day in the life of you, like what are you listening to? Like what do you got on the radio at 2 p.m. when you're in the bath, or
what is your
when you're
your Spotify 2020 list? What is it?
Yeah.
Matt Blaze. No, like literally. He literally was my number 3 of the year. So
this podcast is brought to you by Matt Blaze.
You by Matt Blaze.
Sponsor me, Matt. I don't know what he has to give me. He's not Jim Beam, but anyways, we still love you, Matt. I listen to everything. Lately, I'm listening to a lot of 80s stuff, which I've never really listened to before. Like,
sweet.
I love 90s. 90s throwbacks are always great, like Alanis Morissette, Sheryl Crow, all that kind of stuff. All the Canadian icons, you know.
So now it's like Cyndi Lauper, Madonna, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, like Tina Turner, Whitney Houston, Bruce Springsteen.
Tina Turner, you should watch Walk Off the Earth. They did a song about the which Tina song did they do? It was cool.
Yeah.
They're out on a porch somewhere, and anyway, continue.
Cool. Yeah, lately I'm just bumping all these 80s jams, and I don't know why I gravitated towards that. I used to hate classic rock. Like growing up, I really liked the more modern rock, but my dad always has, still to this day, still has like the classic rock channels. With like Rush, the Foo Fighters. Well, I like the Foo Fighters. Like Journey, and I always hated AC/DC. But I still hate AC/DC. But these days I'm like, okay, I don't mind Journey. I don't mind like Hall & Oates. I don't mind Kiss. I saw Kiss in concert once. That was fun. I just have a different appreciation for it now than I did before for some reason. I don't know why that is. But yeah, I listen to everything from like Drake to Matt Blaze to Feist, Shania Twain. Like I literally listen to everything. So,
right.
Yeah, and I listen to a lot of like indie artists, or there's a few American songwriters that I love, and they aren't necessarily on the radio, but people know them and they have a fairly good following in terms of like touring. There's an artist, his name is Matt Nathanson. He's from California. Love that guy. Like there's a lot of awesome songwriters in the States that are kind of on indie level, but they've done really well for themselves. So yeah, I mean, I really do listen to everything.
And that's kind of why I love what we do with this podcast, because we get to discover a bunch of new music. But also, I gotta look her up now. We there was yesterday or day before yesterday, we were packing up a bunch of records, and my wife grabbed a Yola record, and she looks at the cover and she's like, "What is this? It looks interesting." I'm like, I don't know, just let me put that on Tidal. So I put it on Tidal, and we listened to the whole album in one while we were packing up records in one shot. And for every song, we were like, "Oh, this is cool." So being in this business and doing the podcast, we absorb a lot of new music, and I think over the past year, my music taste has shifted a little bit, because I still am, in essence, the guy that always listens to classic rock, and I still have my classic rock playlists. But I think Tidal also had top 2020 songs, your personal top 2020 or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of indie artists in there, and I like it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I can agree with that too. Like, I'm still like my throwback 90s rock for sure. Right. But in doing the podcast and everything, and knowing Mark, like a lot of the people we've had on the show so far, I would have never listened to if it wasn't for the show at all. So finding new bands, new people, and understanding, like, it's not about, how can I say it? It's, I will be honest, there's some people that we've had on this show where, like, I'm not out looking for their style of music, but I can respect them enough to sit there and listen to the whole album and listen to, like, what are they trying to say? Like, why, like, feel their feelings and like get involved in it. And just, it's a respect kind of thing, I think, like, I grew up with a lot of music. Mom sang my whole life. Mom was big into country music. And like, that's all she ever did was sing. Freaking, we had a karaoke machine in the house, and we'd come home from school and she'd be just singing karaoke all the, like, practicing for her gigs and stuff. Like, that was my life. And it really turned me away from, like, country music. Like, because I grew up with it, I didn't want to hear it. And I think that's where the rock and roll kind of got a hold of me. But I get it. Like I was saying, is that this podcast and knowing Mark has brought a lot of different genres and different people. And I've built friendships with musicians out there that, like, I never would have had before. And, like, my views of the industry haven't really changed much, but I do feel like if we keep doing what we're doing, that we might have a finger in, like, changing some of that shit. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
yeah,
I sure hope that's where this is gonna end up, even through, like, a pandemic and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a respect thing, I think.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and you raise a good point. I think music is about exactly that. It's about connecting with people, and there's so much bullshit that goes on the industry side of things, but meeting other artists and hearing their stories, it's awesome. And that's the whole point, right? Like, even the fact that I get to talk to you guys right now is awesome. Like, and we're connecting over music, and I think that's such a powerful thing. And music's always been that way. Like, music is the thing that connects us, I think, the most.
It's also the easiest thing to connect over. Like, Joel, we had Elementals, right? And the two main guys met in, what was it, high school?
It was like grade 9 or something.
Grade 9
and it was
or
like
something,
a T-shirt.
Yeah, and
right?
he walks.
It was, one of them had a
He walks into the wrong classroom, and he looks around and says, "Oh, I'm not supposed to be here." But he looks at that guy with them crooked vultures T-shirt, and he's like, "We're gonna be friends." And then he walks out, and then they became friends and started a band
love
together.
That.
Yeah,
I love that.
So, I music connects.
Yeah, it really does.
Yep.
I think that's why people are struggling this year. I mean, obviously people are struggling for a myriad of reasons: job loss, financial concerns, health concerns.
Yeah. The minor.
Yeah. Can't pay your rent, who cares? So artists, no, but for real, like I think in terms of artistry, like I said earlier, I mean, I at least feel like we're all kind of on an even playing level at this point, because we all know what it's like to struggle, but we all know what it's like to connect with each other too through music, and we all miss it. And so when we
Right.
get to do it again, that's why it's so much more powerful. Like here, they just shut down all these shows again, which is really unfortunate, but I guess the safe thing to do for the moment. And over the past couple months, we were lucky because we were able to have lower capacity social distance performances for quite a few months.
Yep.
And it was awesome because people missed it so much, and we got to just connect with each other again. And now it's gone again, and people are feeling it. It's hard. And I think next year, whenever things reopen, even for those socially distanced shows, I mean, you want to go to that because you miss the connection, right?
For sure. I think those are all going to be like sold out, whether
Guaranteed.
I think so too, because everyone's going to want to get out and go do something. That it's going to be a different, not a different world, but it's just going to be different than what it was. That's all. But for the better, right? Is what I mean.
Yep, for sure. I think we took it for granted too. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I think a lot of artists did. Like, it was normal, right? Like to go and perform somewhere and to connect with people. It was just what you did. Like,
yeah.
But you really just think about things differently when you don't have the ability to do it. Like you're literally not allowed.
Yeah.
You're literally not allowed. Like it's against the law. Like,
I wanted to ask you too. So you said your first album that you took down, you produced it yourself, and throughout the years you've had like other people producing your albums, right? Which is a reason why you took that one down. So my question to you is, seeing how those other producers produced your albums and the differences that they did or contributed to the album, would you consider producing your own album, like another one?
Yeah.
Like what's stopping you from doing that?
Love it. Love the question. I always love being involved on both sides of things. As in, I don't want someone to come and produce it completely without me. Like I like to have a say. I like to have my hands in there and like have a say, because I think your artistic vision is important. However, I've experienced that it's easy for producers to just like get in there and do their formulaic thing too, even if I'm there. I would definitely consider at least co-producing the next project. Like I want to be involved. My thing is, I'm not a sound engineer, right? So I can do demos and I'm comfortable with that, but I don't have like the equipment to do like a full production of stuff myself. So that's where I get a little hung up on things. What's really interesting about this whole idea of producing is that that's really what fucked me up the most, is the fact that I got so lost in like, oh, who's producing my stuff and my name being associated with their name and all that bullshit. And just for some reason thought that they had more power over me and my art than was necessary. Like, I've always written my stuff myself. And the demo, in terms of like lyrics and arrangement, was pretty much the same as what was produced. So really, a producer can hit record and do like a couple of things on a computer, and they didn't write anything and they didn't change anything. And yet I ended up feeling like they owned me and they owned my music and they just had so much power over me. And isn't that just crazy? Because it's like, in reality, I've realized like they didn't really do anything. Like they hit record on their computer and maybe added a few sounds on their computer, but it was my art. So why do I feel like I can't do it without them? Like that is such a trippy.
Is that just because the title of producer comes with the job, or is that something that intimidated you, or is that the person that you worked with at that time?
I think it's more of the person. I think. I
Right.
think. I had a lot of trust invested in this person, and I think over the years, like, things got really messy personally and professionally. And I think when you get into a situation like that, like, you just lose your sense of identity and worth and all that kind of stuff. So it's been hard for me because, yeah, it really messed with my mind, because I've really, especially when I moved out here to Calgary, like, I've really had to take a step back and think about it. And I'm like, why am I telling myself I can't do this anymore? Because it doesn't make sense. Like, you know, it's crazy to me to think about. Like, I literally thought, well, I can't do it without them. So, like, why? Like, they didn't really do anything.
There's so
So
many artists that do it without a producer.
yeah, I think, you know what it is? I think when this person entered my life, you know, sometimes you meet those people. We were talking about this earlier, like in terms of contracts or signing on the dotted line, and you think you meet this person who kind of is going to change the game for you. I think I was younger and thought that this person was going to, like, be that everything. Like, this was going to be the person to, like, help me get to the next level of my career. And I thought, because this person had worked with a lot of my favorite artists and there was a lot of synchronicities and things that just kind of made sense to me at the time, like, I thought this person was like the end all be all, and it wasn't. So, you know,
Right. You put
Yeah.
all your trust in one person, and that person doesn't
yeah,
follow
that person
through.
actually
Or,
did nothing
yeah.
for me except for
Yeah.
ruin my
Yeah,
life. And just tore me apart, really. And I've been on this journey of, like, trying to remember who the hell I am without that person. Like, it sounds so silly, but, like,
Right.
this industry can really play with your mind sometimes. So
When's
yeah.
the last time you listened to your first album? Do you listen to your own stuff, or do
Yeah,
you
on
kind of
occasion.
record it and let it go?
I usually record it and let it go. I've been really lucky. Like, since I'm new out here, I've had opportunities to, like, almost re-release old stuff. Like, to me, it's old, but since I'm new on the west coast of Canada, like, it's new to someone here. Whereas in
Yeah.
Ontario, I've probably toured that song a million times, or I've had it on the radio over there or whatever. So I've been lucky because I've had to revisit some of these old songs and old recordings. And even like the song we did for the Jim Beam competition, like, I released that song 3 years ago.
Oh,
But to people out here, it's brand new, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah, I saw that video was posted like 3 years ago too. I was like, oh, this isn't a new one. Yeah.
well, and you know what's really funny about it is, like, said producer, I almost released a video of that song 3 years ago, almost to the day to when it came out for the Jim Beam competition. And they told me, oh, don't release it because it's not good. So I didn't end up releasing it, like, 3 years prior. And now I released this video with Jim Beam of the same song and same concept, like, stripped live version of the song. And we end up at the top of the country and winning for the region. I'm just like, this is crazy, right?
That's the best FU there is.
I thought
Right.
so.
That's that Unforgiven story, like Chappelle, right? The big
Yeah.
FU.
Yeah, like, I literally
Nice.
was going to release it 3 years ago. A very similar, yeah, like I said, live version video. And they were like, no, don't. It's not good. And I didn't.
You should have.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Well,
get that there's a time and
so
place for everything, but, like,
Yeah.
it just
yeah,
goes, it was an empowering thing for me on many levels, is the point, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
right. Yeah, because then you can go back and say, well, if that stuff didn't happen to you back then, you wouldn't be where you are today, and you
Yeah.
know, like, where does it end, right? But
Yeah.
I'm definitely glad that you did it the way that you did it. I think it turned out perfect. Like, it obviously did. You guys won, right? So.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
And, like, yeah, I think, you know, just going back to what you were asking, I mean, it's, as much as I hate some of my old stuff, because I think you just grow and you're like, oh God, that came out so long ago and I've grown so much since then. it's cool to look back on some of your old material too and be like, oh, I'm actually really proud of that. And that's kind of
Well,
what
that's
happened with this situation, because it's like, yeah, I feel really strong about that song that I wrote by myself.
right.
It doesn't matter who produced it. Like,
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was kind of getting at with that. Like, if you were to, like, when's the last time you slapped in that first album that you made by yourself, right? That you produced yourself, and listen to it, start cover to cover, and be like, who was I then? And where am I now? Right? And
yeah,
see that transition. And then you can maybe get back in that, like, if you're trying to get back to where you were, that might be a good start, right? Get back and, oh, I remember when I wrote that lyric, or this is what I was doing or going through. Like, this is, yeah, I don't know. I think that's just a cool concept. Like, it's a stamp in time,
yeah,
definitely. And
totally.
don't neglect it is all I'm getting at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really good message. And honestly, it's been a long time since I've listened to that album like front to back. It's been a really long time, but it does have a lot of special meanings to it. I actually recorded it like alongside my dad and some of his musician friends. Like, my dad's a bass player, and yeah, I was probably like 20 years old when we recorded that, like 19, 20. And we had a huge CD release party in my hometown, and like it was sold out, and like we had like it was a special time, and that was before I moved and had a taste of the real industry out there. And like, I didn't
Yeah.
care. I thought I was just like, no, you know what I mean? Like, no one could touch me. I just felt like I was this invincible young artist, and I wasn't egoic about it, but I was like, it doesn't matter if people don't like it, because I had so much genuine support, and I just was expressing myself, like
Yeah.
those were the days when I went out to open mics and people learned my lyrics, and I was like, this is awesome. And then I started getting paid gigs. Like, you got to start somewhere, and those are really
Yeah.
special days, and I honestly, like, I kind of miss those days sometimes, especially when you've been in the industry. Like, I've been in the thick of the industry, and sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? And I think a lot of this, like, you brought up a really good point. If you want to get back to your roots, like, you should probably listen to where you started, because I've really questioned that lately. I don't necessarily think I want to do an album as stripped down as that was, or as raw as it was in terms of production, but I think you're right. There's something to be said about those beginnings, right?
Right. Or some kind of rebuttal to it, right? The next album could be like a rebuttal to who that person was. You know what I mean? Like, just where you are now, as opposed to who you were then, and like a story, an ode to yourself, maybe. I don't know. Just
Yeah.
And call the album something like "Remember When."
I feel like it was a million years ago, and it's so funny because it really wasn't all that long ago, but I just feel like the amount of experiences that I've had from then until now are insane. Like, I've lived in so many different cities, and I've performed in so many different cities, and I've met so many people, and I've had a lot of people walk out of my life too. So much has changed. I've learned a lot about myself, and it's so wild to think about,
was there ever a gig or a specific moment in like in your career where you can pinpoint and be like, this is where everything changed? Do you know what I mean? Like, this is where the plane started taking off here. Can
when
you
I
pinpoint
first
that time?
Yeah, when I first moved to Toronto about 3 years ago, a lot shifted at that time, because prior to that, I left my small hometown and I moved to Montreal, and I thought Montreal's got to be a good place because I used to go out there and gig. So I thought, I'm just going to plant myself there and move there and try to make connections in the industry. And it was a really hard time. First of all, my family's not French. I can speak a little bit of French, but I'm not French. And I found that the art scene was really difficult to get into in Quebec in general. And I lived there for about a year, and I was like, nothing's really working. Like, I met some people, but it wasn't as significant as I thought. You know, the whole producer thing we were just talking about, I thought Montreal was going to be the place where, like, okay, I just released my first album, I'm going to go meet people and like network and try to get to know the industry. And I thought things were just going to come together, and they didn't. So I ended up moving back to Ontario and, like, still being self-produced and putting out stuff and doing things like CBC Searchlight and Similar to the Jim Beam thing, like getting involved with these nationwide competitions and somehow like kind of making it to the top and making connections with CBC, which is great because also they pay really good royalties. So they're very supportive of artists, and like that was awesome. So and locally just trying to do shows, and I used to gig pretty much every day. So that was my life. But I still felt like stuff was missing. So this was around the time when I thought I should start working with a producer instead of being self-produced. I just felt like that was the natural progression of things because everything I put out was self-produced, and it did well locally, but I just kind of wanted to like take things to a bit of a higher level, or at least get stuff on the radio and have that quality of music, right? And so I moved to Toronto and did the same music program that Matt did here out west, because I started doing it out west recently. But there's this program in Toronto called Canada's Music Incubator, and they choose like 15 artists from across the country. So I met artists from here in Alberta that I'm still friends with to this day. And it was like the most intense time of my life. It's pretty much, at the time, I think they've changed it, but at the time it was like a 2 to 3 month program. You move to Toronto, your life is on hold. It's like 9 to 5. You're doing business meetings, you're meeting people from like Stingray Radio, like all the head honchos are flying in from wherever, the heads of different music companies, Sony Records, like you name it, all these people are coming in. You're meeting entertainment lawyers, you're meeting vocal coaches, you're working on your craft, you're co-writing, like it's so intense, and that's your life. And my producer was involved with that as well, and I thought my life was made, right? Because I'm like, I'm working with a producer, getting some stuff on the radio, doing this awesome music program. And I really met like some of my best friends in my entire life in that program, because there's only like 15 of us, right? And everyone put their life on hold. Like there's people from Vancouver, there's people from like all over the country, like New Brunswick, like everyone just stopped their life, got accepted into this program, and it was your life. So I learned a lot. I met a lot of industry people. And that was probably the point where I felt like I understood a little bit more, because as this small indie artist from like Northern Ontario, there's just so much I didn't know in terms of like how to get songs on the radio, or like how the business actually runs. So I learned so much, and it was like such a significant time, but also like all of that came crashing down after a while too, because after that program ended, a lot of people moved back to where they were from. I stayed in Toronto and tried to survive, and it's like sink or swim, man. And I tried to make it work for a couple more years, and it didn't work out very well. So yeah, I ended up reconnecting with some of my really close girlfriends that were in the program with me, and we all like, we just had so much going on. Like we were all so young, and like we're all still young, but we were even younger than we are now. And it's like we were all in these crazy times. Like we had toxic relationships in our personal lives going on, and we were trying to navigate like band situations or producer agreements, and we were just trying to figure ourselves out. And it was a significant time. It really was. And it's crazy because now they run that program out here, which is why, I can end up in a room and know so many people because of that.
From that
it
program.
Just connects the industry across the whole country, essentially. So yeah, I would say that's the time that it broke me in a lot of ways, but it also kind of made me who I am too.
Did it cost a lot of money to enter that? Like, did you have to pay to get into there?
Yes, but they also had a lot of scholarships and partners who are involved with that, right? So they have a lot of like just a lot of partnerships, so they cover quite a bit. But I'm still paying off debt from when I lived in Toronto because it was so expensive. Ugh. So it's like, just live on the credit card, like it was rough. It was a rough time. But I would say honestly, like that was probably the most significant shift. And I'm just trying to like figure out the next chapter, because I think that was a really significant chapter for me. But
Right.
it wasn't the end all be all that I thought it was going to be. So yeah.
Cool.
Wow.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
I was trying to think how we got to that topic.
Well, because I wanted to know where it was like if she could pinpoint like a shift.
Oh,
in
right.
the
Oh,
career.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what that was. I was
You're zoning out.
no. I was so focused on that story. I was like, how did we get to this? But yeah, okay.
That was a good story. That was a good story.
Yeah. I almost envisioned something like a Big Brother type thing.
Yeah, like literally.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like literally, a lot of us lived together at the time. I didn't, but quite a few people who moved from Alberta or BC or whatever, like we paired up, a lot of them as roommates. So it's like you're spending your 9 to 5 in this intensive music program together, and then you're living together, and then you're going out to a show together. Like we just all did everything together, right? So
which is how the strong friendships began, right? Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I still talk to a lot of those people every day. Like every day we voice memo, even if we're on different like time zones and stuff. And we made some really solid bonds for sure. But we also made bonds that were terrible. So,
yeah. You can't get along with everybody.
Yeah, true. I think it really showed us like the truth of the industry, especially in Canada. Like Canada's a big country, but it's a small world. And once you meet certain people in the industry from certain labels, or like when you meet producers, I mean, it's a small world. And even with touring bands, like it's a small industry. So it's interesting.
Have you toured in the States at all?
No, I've always wanted to though, like always. Obviously, this is not the year.
I was just about to say, you'll have to wait a year or so.
Yeah, this is not the year. No, but I've loved the States, especially like the West Coast. I'm a huge West Coast girl, which is funny because I'm not from there, but there's something about the West Coast for me. Like, I just kind of want to go from Seattle to like Portland to California and just do the coast.
That's
Tyler
the hat
also
thing.
said hat thing.
The hats are very California-like.
There's something about California, man. Like I've always been so connected to California, and I felt like I belong there, and eventually want to be there. I don't know. It's the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the mountains. Like, I don't know. It just kind of feels like home to me. But for now, I'm in Calgary.
Yeah, same thing.
I mean, the mountains are nice, and they're like an hour drive away, so it's not too bad. But
Alberta is like California, minus the beach and warm weather. And,
you guys had some warm weather recently, didn't you, in Calgary?
It was plus 16 the other day.
What?
Yeah, it's insane.
Well,
my birthday was in October, and I remember going out to my birthday dinner, and it was like minus 20 in October. And now it's December, and it's almost plus 20. It's like, what is happening right now?
I hope that's coming this way. I really do.
Well, it was warmer today. I know you haven't been outside yet, but it was like plus 5. Yeah, it was plus 5 or something today.
I think it was 12 here today.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but it's weird because honestly, in October, I had pretty much a mental breakdown because it felt like winter. It was not only minus 20, but we had at least 10 inches of snow. Yeah. If not more.
We got that here too.
Yeah.
And I thought for sure it was going to stay because it did. It didn't melt. Like, being a Canadian, early snowfalls happen, but they usually melt within a couple days. At least they do in Ontario. But here, this year, I thought, okay, it's been a week. Okay, it's been 2 weeks. The snow has not melted yet. It's still minus 20. And I was like, what is happening? But here we are. It's like plus 12.
Welcome to the prairies.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Well, here too, like once the snow falls, it usually doesn't melt till March.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I thought for sure it was going to be winter, but but now I'm in my running shoes outside and my flats, so
oh yeah.
Don't even have to wear my boots anymore. It's weird.
Yeah.
What was that thing I saw you on? Oh, I feel like it was a month ago. I think I had messaged you shortly after it. You did like an Instagram live with some girl, and
Oh,
you sang a
Crystal.
couple songs on it.
Yeah. I was thinking about that earlier because I remember that you tuned in and watched some of that.
Oh, well, for sure. Who was that girl?
Yeah, so she's Crystal McGrath. She's an awesome singer-songwriter here in Calgary. She also did this music program that is now in Calgary as well. Yeah,
Like at
she
the
does
same
like
time as you?
no, so like they used to do it in Toronto only, and then they started doing it in Calgary. So like Matt did it. This lovely girl Crystal did it. It's fairly new to the Calgary edition. Like basically they fly people out here and they run it here. This year, I think, of course, they're doing it virtually because that's life.
Right.
Yeah, but we all basically get to know the same industry people. But anyways, yeah, she's a singer-songwriter locally and she's great. And she does like so much awesome stuff. Like she started her Instagram live podcast thing. And she has like so many businesses going on. Like she's such a great entrepreneur. She has like an online portal for like yoga classes and meditation classes. And she's just like giving her like every day, like so committed. And yeah, I was very lucky to meet her. And she is doing this Artist Behind the Music podcast. I guess you could call it a podcast. It's on Instagram Live, but it's, I mean, you watched. It's like a podcast basically.
Yeah, it was cool.
And
yep.
Yeah, I just love stuff like that because you get to know people behind their music, right? And who they are and what makes them tick and how they're coping with the year and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I really enjoyed that.
I don't even remember how I ended up finding that. Did you? You must have posted that you were going to be on it.
I think that's so. Yeah.
Because I don't follow her, so I was just like, oh, I'll check this out. So, yeah.
You know, it vaguely sounds familiar. I think I checked in too.
I might have told you that.
Yeah.
I think I might have told you that I was watching that.
Yeah, and then when I tuned in, it was like the last 5 minutes, and then it was done.
Okay.
I think I might have.
It felt very similar to this in terms of just like having a very like casual yet really refreshing conversation. So I just love doing stuff like this. It's just so nice to have like good connections with people and just good conversations, you know?
Oh, for sure. Like Mark and I, we want to be doing this like in person, and obviously we can't, right? So hopefully we can get you in house and have a glass of wine with you.
That would be officially. Awesome.
I'll have a beer, thanks.
I'll have give me a Coke. Coke or Pepsi.
Yeah.
I'm not a beer girl, I'll tell you that, but
that's fine. My wife is a wine drinker. You can join her.
All right.
Yeah. Janelle too.
Actually, the last thing I'll say about Matt for tonight is that he has some wine merch. I don't know if you know that. Did you ever see that?
Wine merch?
Yeah. So I don't think he's selling it online, but he has it at his shows. So he does some woodworking. Yep. He actually built me my table, which is awesome. Anyways, he made these really cool wine holders. It's literally a piece of wood that goes sideways.
I've seen those.
Yeah.
I think I saw them too, yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cool. It's like literally an angled piece of wood. It's not attached to anything and you're like, how is it staying like that? And it just stays like that. And you put a bottle of wine in it. And one of our friends here locally does like wooden picks, like guitar picks and engravings in wood and stuff. And so they engraved his logo into this wine holder and it's pretty cool. It's cool.
Sweet. I was asking him to try and figure out how to do I got a pretty intense movie collection in the basement and I'm running out of space. I've got 2 like stand-up shelves that are full.
Yeah.
So, and I need more space because now I've got them in like bags piled up and nothing's organized. So I was messaging him and I was like he loved the idea of helping me like build some kind of shelf for it, but the cost to get it here would just be ridiculous.
Totally.
He should just come. He should just come out here, deliver it, and then we can do the podcast.
He should just come here and build it. I got everything he needs.
He's got nothing else to do. He's got nothing else to do.
He's just and then he can like home drinking whiskey.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah, come on, Matt. Get your butt out here and build me a shelf.
No, for real. I was gonna say, honestly, it's cheaper for him to drive it out there than it would be for him to ship it.
You guys should hop in a car together and drive here, and then we'll hang out
I'd do
together.
it. I would
Shit,
do
man,
it.
we'll put on a show. We'll
We
do a
could do-
Funky Moose presents,
Yeah, that's still on the list.
and then
That would
we'll
be fun.
put it on.
That was actually the plan to do this year because Funky Moose Records Funky Moose Records this year exists 5 years, and the plan was
Oh.
to organize a mini festival type thing, but then shit hit the fan, and we
Yeah.
didn't do that. So maybe next year.
I
Hopefully.
say yes, and I say that him and I should come out, and then we could jam some of his songs together because apparently I sing his songs better than he does.
There you
I
go.
don't say that. That's just what he said. No, but I literally think it would be fun to like do some jams.
Yeah.
And then
For
throw in
sure.
some 80s tunes as well.
Yeah. Well, by that time
Love it.
you're out of that phase, probably.
True.
Nah.
Yeah.
No. Hey, yeah, you'll be into disco.
I listened to
We'll break-
disco too. I listened
Yeah.
to disco yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Yeah, in the morning.
in the neon spandex. Yep.
Disco is pretty great sometimes, honestly. Like I
Oh, yeah.
I love disco.
Yep.
I don't understand how it got such a bad rap. What the hell happened that it just like it was shunned for so long?
Who says?
I don't know. I bought a disco ball literally on Tuesday when I went to the dollar store and bought all this stuff for Matt's video to look like him. I also bought a disco ball at Dollarama.
Because you happen to run into one.
Yeah. Well, I
Cool.
actually saw on Pinterest they had a bunch of disco balls, and when the sunlight hits it, it creates all these cool speckles on the wall. And I was like, I need a disco ball in my life.
Yeah.
And it also just matches my Christmas decor because I have a lot of like silver tinsel and just like hints of silver going on. So I just threw a disco ball in the mix. So I don't know.
Love it.
I'm
Love
not
Yeah.
going out for New Year's probably, so might as well have a disco ball in my dining room. Why
Sweet.
not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there anything you would like to plug, or where can people find you? Because I think we've been, how long have we been talking? About 2
I don't
hours?
know. Yeah,
I can't
where
believe
would
it's been
you
that long.
where would you direct people to find your music and like
Yeah.
check stuff up?
Yeah. Anywhere online is under Justine Giles. So I would say right now I'm mostly on Instagram. More than anything else. I mean, I have stuff on Spotify, but it's really just the most recent singles I've put out. So if people want to stream it, that's cool. But I would say like to keep up to date with anything important, like just check out my Instagram. And that's just Ms. Justine Giles, MS, just Ms. What else? I mean, I have the Jim Beam video up on my YouTube channel and
Cool.
my website, justinegiles.com. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much just my name anywhere.
You need to update your website.
Oh, it's so old. It's brutal. It's brutal. I will 100% own up to that.
Yeah, I just saw it this afternoon, and it says
It's
vote
awful.
here, vote here.
Yeah.
I think we're done
Yeah,
now.
I haven't been on that in a long time. For sure. But yeah, I mean,
Awesome.
I love Instagram. So if people want to see me there, it's probably
Do
where
you-
I
would
engage.
you say
Or on
you-
Twitter. I love
I was
Twitter too.
gonna
'Cause
ask
that's when
you
I met you
if-
guys.
I was gonna ask you which one you like better, Instagram or Twitter,
Well,
Say Twitter.
or they
I
each
have
have
to
their purpose.
say, like, I know Twitter can be a terrible place for a lot of people, but for me, like, I meet the best people on Twitter. Like, I really do. I have some good conversations with people on Twitter, but I also do on Instagram too. So I'm really lucky because, like, I'm not having much luck with Facebook these days. It's turning
Oh,
into the
Facebook
platform where like all the old folks are, and they're just like, why do you have your hair like that? And it's just like, that's not the point.
Get off.
Why are you wearing that hat?
Get off my lawn.
Like, yeah, exactly. So I mean, I try not to be on Facebook these days. Instagram, I love, like I said earlier, just because I find genuine connections with people and they seem to follow along for X amount of years and they go through the highs and lows and it feels like they know me or I know them. So that's cool in terms of building relationships. I love Twitter for connecting with people too. And it's just, again, that comedic thing. Like you can think of something really ridiculous and all of a sudden it's like, oh, gotta tweet that.
Right.
I try not to use it as a negative outlet. I know a lot of people do, and I definitely have my moments where you just need that one venting space, and Twitter seems to be the place to do that.
Yep.
But honestly,
I used to have that. I started noticing on my personal profile, my personal Twitter. There was a period where all my tweets were me bitching about something, and I was like, "Oh,
yeah,
okay, this has to change." So now I'm trying to
it's
be
so
more
easy to do
positive.
that. I
Yep.
feel like for some reason Twitter is that place. I also know a lot of political stuff is going on Twitter, and I just
Yep.
try not to get overly
Yeah.
involved in it.
You can mute words, and that's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, it's not perfect, but it helps a lot. You can just filter out the political crap and
Yeah, because I
yeah,
think Twitter can be a nice place. Like that's where
yeah,
I met you guys, and
yeah. That's
um,
actually most of our artists that we have lately went through Twitter and some Instagram, but a lot of them were from Twitter.
yeah. The good thing about Twitter too is I don't really think there's an algorithm as much as there is on Instagram now. Like Instagram's changing a lot. It
Mhm.
has changed a lot since it first came out. Like I remember
Yep.
it started out as like this photography thing, and I've taken a lot of photography classes, and I loved posting just nature photography when it first came out, or pictures with cool filters. Like it was really vintage filters at the time, and it's just changed a lot, and you don't really see everyone's posts anymore, similar to Facebook, right? So I
Yep.
think
Yeah.
that's kind of unfortunate. Like it's just changing and you don't always reach people organically anymore, so that's a bummer. But yeah, I like Twitter. The thing I like about it the most is like I could go through my day and post something and I feel like it can make someone smile. It's very similar to the comedy thing we were talking about. Like I could
Yep.
just think of something ridiculous to myself, and instead of keeping it to myself, I can just put it on Twitter and a bunch of people are like, "Oh, that's great," or "That's funny," or it's that
Yeah.
little
Right.
thing. It's like you're experiencing something with someone throughout the day. And
Yeah.
these days, it's nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had this discussion with Manfred from Elephants and Stars last week, and uh, and he was saying,
I'll have to send you the link to this story, but go ahead,
yeah,
Mark.
Yeah, you
he
should.
was saying that oh, sometimes I think of this ridiculously awesome tweet that I'm gonna get a lot of likes and retweets on, and then I post it and nothing happens,
Yeah, it's true.
or this
It does
thing that
happen.
this thing that I put 3 seconds of thought into all of a sudden blows up,
Yeah,
Yeah. And
so
then he
true.
regrets it the next day. Yeah.
and then he
Oh,
deletes the tweet. Yeah.
oh, I've done that. I've 100% like
Oh yeah. Yeah.
had a wine buzz and decided now's a great time to just confess everything on Twitter. And then a week later, I'm like, that should probably not be on the internet, Justine. So, or when I try to you know, subliminal, like I'm trying to say something to somebody and I know that they follow me and I'm like, okay, hopefully you read this. And it's
Oh, that's
directed
funny.
towards you, but then I always get replies from the wrong people and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, it wasn't about you.
Yeah, I didn't mean you.
Fred. Like, I'm just like, damn it, it never hits the right person at the
Yeah.
right time.
That's
But that's
funny.
part of the fun. It's Twitter
Yeah.
roulette. So
That's
How
right.
long have you been on Twitter for?
oh, long time. I would
Yeah.
say probably since that started too. Like, I don't know. How long has it been around? Almost 10 years?
2008.
Yeah, I think so. Hey, I'm
Yeah.
so late to the game. I just started Instagram a couple years ago. I was like, fuck Facebook, I'm done with it. So I just washed my hands of it, started an Instagram account and started that, having fun with that. And then Mark got me onto Twitter a couple months ago.
So by
So
being
I'm
on
Yeah.
on Instagram, you're still on Facebook.
yeah, but I mean like Facebook. Like I'm not
Yeah, yeah.
going on Facebook, right?
Justine,
In my mind, they're separated.
Justine, you joined March 2009.
So yeah, I've been on there
Which
for
one,
quite
Twitter?
a while.
Twitter, yeah.
Right.
So I've been tweeting a bunch of bullshit for a long time.
I'm trying to figure out how to get have followers on Twitter. Can't figure it out.
Here's my thing. I feel like a lot of people aren't on Twitter anymore.
What?
You think they're moving to TikTok or what?
No.
Yeah, I think there's less people on Twitter than there used to be. I mean, obviously there's still people on Twitter, but I just feel like it's not as popular as it was.
Right. Maybe they're like fuck Twitter, like I was fuck Facebook.
Yeah,
Maybe.
Exactly.
I
But
don't
this
think
is
so.
why I find good people on Twitter, because the people who still remain on Twitter
Are awesome.
Yeah, those are your people.
Right.
Like you guys, like, you know, those are the people you want to, like, it's after everyone says fuck it and they leave, get all those people out of the way, and then you find the good people who stick around on the old platforms. That's how all the old folks feel on Facebook right now, right? They're just like, everyone's gone, so they have their little community.
Facebook's so weird.
I'm just scrolling through my own tweets just to see how I'm tweeting.
Yours or Funky Moose's?
No, my personal one. There's a lot of Formula One in there.
I noticed that.
Me complaining about meetings. More Formula One. Oh, Arkells. Oh, did you see that video where Max from the Arkells? He has a Zoom call with Keith Urban, and he tells Keith Urban, "Fuck you."
Oh, I did.
Yeah,
I did. Yeah, because he stole the gig at the halftime show at the football game or something.
Yeah, so the Arkells apparently were supposed to play the halftime show for the Grey Cup, but then the Grey Cup hired Keith Urban. So Max, the front man of Arkells, is now on a Zoom call and tells Keith Urban, "So we had this all arranged. So thanks a lot and fuck you."
Oh my god!
He's a pretty good sport about it, so it's all good.
How about my Trimclad commercial today? Do you guys remember that?
I thought it was great.
I was like, what the hell am I watching?
Oh yeah, you wouldn't know because that's before your day.
Yeah, we had commercials like it, but not.
Well, I don't know, man. This commercial, that song was like stuck. I definitely my head when that song came out, because it's just so soulful, man. It's so good for a paint commercial.
It's probably one of the best jingles out there for a commercial, really. There's some terrible jingles out there.
Oh man, I had forgotten all about that commercial, but today I was like watching a bunch of Nardwuar interviews, and there was one where he's with Seth Rogen, and Seth Rogen had mentioned that Trimclad commercial, and I was like, fuck yeah, I remember that. So then I found it and I put it on there. So thanks,
that's awesome,
Nardwuar, for that commercial. But
I feel like Twitter for me right now is literally just my mental state. It's either like, look at all this funny comedy, or like, oh, today sucks and COVID sucks and the world is overwhelming. It's like one or the other. There's no in between. Like,
well, because the in between stuff is not interesting for Twitter.
Right, exactly. So it's either like everything sucks or this is hilarious.
Yeah,
like, I don't know.
Exactly.
Or I'm trying to send a message to somebody without directly saying it, and the wrong person's going to be like, "Oh, that's for me," and I'm like, "No, it's not about you."
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna say that all the time now. Every time you write something, I'm gonna be like, I'll be private messaging you after.
Yeah, was that for me? Was that?
Yeah, is that
you meant me, right?
To me?
That was for me. It's always like these random guys, and I'm like, no, it was not directed to you. I don't know you. Oh goddamn.
That's
awesome.
That's funny.
Anyways, thanks so much for having me, guys. I can't believe it's been 2 hours. It just
feels
know. Like
2.5
minutes. It was super fun. So
yeah,
you'll have to send me a couple of those videos that were on your stories if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, I will.
Yeah,
you keep trying to convince him to look like me. That'll be fun.
I missed them, so I need all of them.
Okay. Well, there's
I seriously.
There's like a 3-minute one. Like the first one I edited was 3 minutes, and I sent it to Matt directly, and I didn't post it anywhere. Then I condensed it to 1 minute, and this is all from 20 minutes of footage. Condensed it to 1 minute for Instagram, and then I posted a couple bloopers and some behind the scenes. But yeah,
man, I think
I didn't
strongly think that you're on to something there. I liked it. I enjoyed it. so much.
Thanks. I did too. I had too much fun, really.
Okay, I have a feeling we can talk all night, but we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, of course. I'd love to.
Yeah, and
You are
Keep in touch.
more than welcome. Yeah, you are welcome here anytime. If you
Yep.
want to use the platform for anything, just you shout out, let us know.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I'll definitely send you those videos.
Sweet.
Awesome. Thanks, Justine. See you later.
Thanks. Take care, guys.
Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba